I feel like people often conflate their identity with the thing that they're doing instead of realizing that that's just an expression of who you are.
Unless this goes exactly the way I want it to go, I am an abject failure.
I thought I was a hero.
After leaving Warner's, there was this whole kind of thing of like, okay, well, who am I now? Hey everyone, and welcome to 12 Steps to Success, the podcast. Before we start, I want to say something about this conversation. This episode isn't loud. It doesn't jump all over the place, and it doesn't try to impress you with big names or accolades. What it does do is slow things down in a way that feels really rare right now. Chris Brereton has lived many different lives: artist, founder, executive, mentor, and his newest role, father. And rather than presenting a neat success story, this conversation is all about exploring what happens when identity shifts, when roles fall away, and when you're forced to rethink how you define progress and success. We talk about mentorship, about building careers that don't follow a straight line, and about what it means to stop seeing life as a ladder and start seeing it as a portfolio. There's a huge amount of honesty here, and some perspective that only really comes with time. This is one of those episodes that rewards listening without distraction. So let's get started. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome to the show Chris Brereton, who has put up with my bullshit much more than he really needs to. As you are generally the first person I call when I'm like, this weird thing is going on in my life right now. You seem like the kind of person that would have some good advice, so let me just dump it on you.
I don't think it's bullshit, and I appreciate the phone call. Or the Zoom call, or whatever the platform is we're using.
Well, thank you, Chris. I really appreciate that. So the very first question I have, which generally goes to everybody and is a very British thing, what's your name and where'd you come from?
My name is actually Sean Christopher Brereton, which most people don't realize. Yeah. Did you know that?
Like, we are just over a minute into this and you've already given me stuff I did not know.
Yeah. So I'm a second, because I'm an Irish boy and my family went John, Sean, John, Sean. I'm the second Sean in this iteration. And so had I had a boy, my first boy should be John Christopher Brereton, but I had a girl, so I got off the hook.
That is true. And actually, that is a really good segue because you are officially in your daddy era. How are you finding it? Lila's 6 months now?
Yeah, 6.5 months. Great memory. I love it. I wasn't sure if I would or not. I was like, I thought I might be incredibly uncomfortable and uncertain all the time. But the thing I've been most surprised about is it feels so natural. Like we're built to do this biologically or something.
I mean, there is that, but also given your career path, you have managed a bunch of children for decades now. So it does seem like a natural extension of what you've done.
Yeah, I've managed a bunch of people, we'll call them, and have, I think, like 8 years of coaching myself to coach others. And so maybe some of that dad stuff has come through there.
And I'm sure that Taylor is incredibly happy that you are settling into this as well as you are.
I think she is. And she's doing an incredible job. We've been fortunate that through a turn of events, she's been able to stay at home after the pregnancy, after like what would have normally been the maternity leave, and isn't thinking about going back to work until we get into the new year. So we've had this full 6, it'll be more like 8 months by the time we even start having that chat, which has been a luxury to say the least.
That is amazing. I would like to go back to the early days of, now I'm going to call you Sean. You were raised by the Boys and Girls Club. At one point you became Youth of the Year and you worked summers at the YMCA.
I didn't work at the YMCA. I went to summer camps at the YMCA, but I was a junior leader at the Boys and Girls Club, which was my first job. And I was.
What is it?
Junior leader was basically you're a counselor, except you get paid in field trip credit because you're too young to earn a real income.
So it's child labor.
It's child labor.
With slightly less exploitation because no cash changes hands.
Yes, exactly. But I learned a lot. And my first job, when I finally could have a real job at 15 with a work permit, was to be an actual counselor because I had earned the right.
I mean, that's kind of amazing that you were responsible for that many people at the age of 15.
Yeah, I haven't really even thought about that in a really long time, but there's something there. It's also the first place I did community service when I almost got expelled from school.
Okay,
They
that's a
basically just like
story.
took care of my dumb ass when I was a kid and then gave me a job.
I want to dig more into that, the community service after nearly getting expelled bit. What brought this on? And it seems to me like a character defining moment in your origin story.
Man, you're pulling some deep threads here for me. It is character defining in a way that I haven't really thought about much. I did community service because I brought a pocket knife to school, which was a no-no. It should always be a no-no. But my dumb friend, while standing next to the police on campus, was like, "Did you bring your knife today?" That's what led to them discovering said knife. And unfortunately, the year before that, a kid at our school had been stabbed and he died on campus at school. So the idea of having a knife at that school that quick to, it was just all kinds of bad. Plus, I looked like Marilyn Manson and had long black hair and my nails painted and I was wearing spiked bracelets and Columbine had just happened. And so I was like all kinds of target problems. I looked exactly like what shouldn't be happening there. The character defining part was the person I was assigned to do community service with at the Boys and Girls Club was the executive director. His name I still remember is Earl Okamoto, though I have not seen him in probably 20 years, 25 years. But he really took me under his wing and I think saw something in me. And through that experience, we became close. And then he continued to sort of become this wonderful male mentor for me for a really long time and is one of many male mentors that have taken me under their wings. And I've really realized that recently as I've gotten older, that like, dang, I've had so many people that have given me time, love, and attention that turned me into the guy that I am today. And like, I got to really find a way to repay that.
Is that one of the reasons why you are so free with your time for other people? Because so much of my experience with you has been around just the willingness to be there and support. And not just me, but I've seen you do it with other people as well. And you really are a connector of people. Does that stem from this kind of really early experience of the value of mentorship?
When you invited me to this podcast, you didn't tell me it was a therapy session. That said, I think so. I don't know. I've never really connected it to that. I think where that comes from consciously for me is more of like a Buddhist mentality of like pay it forward, karma building, goodwill building kind of energy. I think energy begets energy. And if I can focus on doing positive things for other people, then those things come back in mysterious ways for me later. And I think that's a good thing. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's how I've at least told myself the story. But as we're having this therapy session, I'm realizing maybe it is because so many people have done those things for me and it's my way of paying it back, even though it looks different.
One of my favorite quotes from you online is we first, not me first. I think one of the reasons why I always love working with you is because I feel like just the conversations we have, you make me better.
Likewise, that goes both ways for sure. Also, like when I've taken stock and where the me first stuff comes from, I definitely stole that language from somebody. But when I take stock or inventory of anything good that I've done, it's never been by myself. And a lot of my analogies go back to music because some of the most fun I've ever had in my life was making music and getting in a van and living down by the river, so to speak, and playing shows. But the music we wrote was a collective of people who had different skill sets that came together to put those things in the same room to hopefully write a song, to hopefully make a record and hopefully bring that record to a show. And it's like you needed all of those people in the band, but also the audience and the support systems and the venue owners. And like, I realized that really early when we were dipshit kids playing in a rock and roll band that it was not a me thing. It was a we thing for sure.
And so as that being a great example of a we thing, you did that for 7 years. What brought you to music in the first place? Because again, as somebody who's spent their entire career in this business, music isn't for the faint-hearted because it is a struggle every single day. So what was it that kind of really drew you to music as a whole?
I don't know if there was like one catalyzing moment. The thing you're making me remember, because you're making me go back in time with like Boys and Girls Club and where did I come from? There were these two kids in my neighborhood, and one played guitar, one played bass. They were brothers. And they were the first people that I knew that had instruments and amps. And they were like 5 or 6 years older than me. All my friends have always been like slightly older than me for some reason. But I would go to their house and like grab their stuff, and like just make sounds and be loud. And I had a blast doing that. I think though before that there's always been a creative bone in my body. And so when I realized I could do that with other people, it was more fun. And the outcome was usually better than I could do by myself. Into the we before me thing is like, I can be an independent artist and paint and it's enjoyable to me. But man, when I make art with other people, it's so much more interesting and engaging. And music was that thing that like let me do that a lot. And then we got a lot of feedback really fast in music of like whether people liked it or not. Oftentimes they didn't like it at all. Our neighbors definitely hated it, you know. But the thing that was fun about music and what's fun about product and what's fun about business is like when I look at all of those processes, it's all the same thing at the end of the day. The expression is different, but the activity of finding wonderful people to collaborate with to create something that hopefully the world wants to react with and pay you enough to keep going to make more of is like it's the same journey. And it is mostly painful, but occasionally really exciting.
True. And, I agree with you. I think so often people in any field of work kind of miss the fact that near enough all of us are inherently creative and we bring that to whatever work we do. I'm an entertainment lawyer by trade. Doesn't mean I don't get creative with contracts because
Yeah.
sometimes
But
really
then you
do
get
get
super
creative.
creative. I think about that a lot. Like I know folks who are accountants or lawyers or spreadsheet masters, and there is a tremendous amount of creativity in those fields. But a lot of those people, I think, feel like they aren't creative or the creativity has been trained out of them because they think of their identity as I'm a lawyer, so therefore I can't be creative.
So going back to the band, 7 years, who were you when you were in that band? What was the kind of person that you became and like what were you feeling throughout all of that?
I wish I was self-aware enough to know how to answer that question at the time.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. I was the singer of Avarice was the band's name. In my head, and my identity was I was the singer of Avarice. And I remember even writing in my journals at the time that like I never wanted to come home at 30 and have to get a job after this. I came home at 21, by the way, much sooner than 30 and got a job. But I remember like the identity was I was this entity, the singer of this band, and I had nothing else going for me other than that in my mind. And so when that was over, there was like a trough of despair of like, who am I for sure? The thing that filled that gap though quickly was, oh, I'm the founder of the company at the time was called Picture Healing. And I'm the founder of this company that does this thing. And again, my identity was consumed by the thing that I was doing, not by my qualities or my beliefs or my values or the things that it was all centered around the thing I did, I guess.
And so do you see that as like a consistent thread throughout your life for a long period of time where what you did was who you perceived yourself to be?
Yes. Unfortunately, I feel like I've learned that lesson at least 3 times, which means I guess I didn't learn it the first 2. But absolutely, I think this is common. I don't think I'm an alien in this at all, but I feel like people often conflate their identity with the thing that they're doing because it's an easy thing. It's a visual thing to assign value to instead of realizing that that's just an expression of who you are at the end of the day. And it's the thing you're choosing to do currently, but it's not who you are. And that's something that I feel like once you kind of break through, is really, really freeing to allow you to do many things and be many things at the same time because you don't have to be a single thing.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
It's interesting when you talk about the kind of how liberating it can be and freeing once you let go of that because, I've been in this industry a really long time. And after leaving Warner's, there was this whole kind of thing of like, okay, well, who am I now? Because then I was an executive vice president of a global music company. But I really struggled with that idea of who am I? And for me, I left Warner's when I was 40. I didn't have to have that thought at the age of 21.
Yeah.
Like I was a raging alcoholic at the age of 21. Like I was meant to be like helping people like you. Couldn't help myself. But how did you even begin to process that trough of despair at the age of 21?
Man, I don't know. I didn't do it in a healthy way. I think I replaced that with alcohol and drugs for a serious period of time. I don't know. I think there was a lot of soul searching in each of the different moments. And there definitely was a lot of like unhealthy, not good moments of my life by any means to reflect on where I was and the shit that I was doing in those moments. But I think when things get really tough and you start to dig in and realize like, I don't want to keep doing this thing now either. Like maybe I thought I was this, but now I'm doing this really unhealthy whiplash behavior to try to fill the hole of whatever I thought I was. Those were moments where I like, you got to learn some self-awareness and start digging in on what is it that I value and what makes me me and who do I think I am? If I'm not that, what am I? And just having the time and space to ask yourself those questions, I think is something a lot of people never even get to.
Yeah, completely. And where did you develop the knowledge to be so introspective around that time? Speaking from my own
Yeah.
personal perspective, I didn't even have the words to ask myself those kind of questions
So
until recently.
here's the theme reemerging of another male role model in my life who took me under his wing. His name's Dave Clark. I call him dad, even though I have a bio dad. But at the time, I had met him through dating his niece when I was 14 or so. We met and we dated for 5 years. And he was uncle dad in her life. And so I met him through her, and he was sort of like a role model and also like a mirror for me in a lot of ways at the time, where he like did not give a shit that I was the singer of a rock and roll band and had a stupid little indie deal. Like he just thought I was stupid. I thought I was a fucking hero. My ego was way bigger than it is today at the time, for sure. And it's still sizable.
But ego as well, like being in a rock band, you kind of have to have that ego, otherwise you
It's kind
can't
of
get on the
part of the job,
stage.
especially as a singer. Yeah. But the relationship that we had and the mirror that he would hold up for me often of like calling me on my shit and holding me accountable to things and not letting me off the hook if I committed to do something and didn't get it done. Like a lot of those things that like, I don't know, maybe good parents typically provide, but like that was my first person in my life that really held me to account like that. And in a way with like tremendous amount of love behind it. It wasn't aggressive or like punishing. It was more like is that the guy you want to be? And I remember like stupid things that he'd say to me, like, do you want to be a doer or a sayer? And I was like, if I think about that, I want to be a doer, not just say shit and not get it done, you know? And like those little moments of reflection and him challenging me, I guess, were sort of one of the first moments that I really got to dig in and get some self-awareness.
And so moving on from being in a band and becoming more of a doer,
Yeah.
the first tech company you started was very much a social enterprise working with nonprofits.
Yep.
That's a huge pivot from being the front man of a band.
Yeah.
What was the driving force behind that? Because, you know, most frontmen of bands are not necessarily thinking about doing good for others at that point in their life.
Sure.
And this is the beginning of another 7-year stint of your life. And so
Yeah.
kind of like talk me through that.
The path to that was no longer in a band, need to make money. Somehow found myself in a marketing role for a wealth management business, wearing a 3-piece suit and hiding my tattoos. And I had a coffee bean routine and I was using my Palm Trio and I felt like a total fraud all the time in this
Did
role.
you still have long hair and black lipstick at
No,
this
at
point?
that point I was starting to go bald, but not admitting it yet. And like couldn't really grow a beard. So I just looked really awkward all the time.
Unlike that solid long hair, black lipstick look, which isn't awkward at all.
Yeah, so that wasn't awkward. Everyone loved it. The quick reality became for me though, that like, if I'm just going to work for the rest of my life, which it seems like I might have to, because I don't know if I'm the singer of Avarice or who the fuck I am anymore. I guess I have to have a job because I have to pay for my bills and figure out how to survive in this real world that I'm now interacting with. And oh, by the way, I dropped out of high school to play in a rock and roll band. So I don't even have a diploma to lean on and I haven't gone to school and shit, what does all this look like? I realized if I was just going to go to work to make money to pay my bills and that was it, I was going to be a very unhappy individual. Also, that's the lighter version of the way I thought about it at the time. Had stronger language for it. And so I decided if I was going to do something with what I was good at, which at the time was I had started to learn how to build websites because I was doing it for other bands. And I had a little business selling merchandise to bands. And I was doing artwork for the merchandise because I knew how to do Photoshop and Illustrator and that kind of stuff at the time. And it was creative and fun to do those things. I was like, oh, it's kind of like businessy and web stuff. Like I'll start a tech company because I could do it by myself or maybe with one or two other people. And brick and mortar sounds like a ton of money. And I don't know if anyone will even invest in me. But what should I make? And I was like, if I'm just doing that to make money, that's not interesting. And so what if we make a product where we could help nonprofits? And at the time, the thing on my mind was I wanted to help Children's Hospital because my best friend had a survived leukemia. And so I made this really fat business model that nobody understood. But the intent was I was going to use my creativity and whatever skills I had earned to raise money through a business to funnel it back to nonprofits so that I at least was doing something useful.
Which is a very endearing motivator for starting a business. And you talk about, nobody understood the business model. How did you manage to do it for 7 years if nobody understood the business model?
We didn't really make any money for 7 years. We somehow survived on goodwill and charm, I guess. I was making WordPress websites on the weekends to pay my own rent because I definitely couldn't survive on the company's money. That just kept going into trying to survive as a company.
Juggling building a business at the same time as not sleeping and building WordPress sites for other people just so you could actually pay the bills doesn't sound like much of a surprise that led to burnout.
Or maybe we'll call it like hyper alcoholism for a period of time. Definitely some burnout there before it was like a slang thing to say. Part of that was, I think it was more like 8 years or 9 years by the time we ended up like transitioning this to this private equity group that took it over and turned it into whatever it is today. And at that point, we had an office that I was sharing with a company called Charity Buzz, and we had been 3 months back on rent, and I hadn't paid payroll, and like all that stuff was a lot for a 27-year-old. And most 27-year-olds are like just getting out of school. And yeah, all my friends were like doing something so wildly different too. So I constantly felt like no one really got what was on my plate and didn't really relate to the pressure or the effort.
Which is fair. I mean, at what point did that change in your life then? Because being in a band, most people don't understand.
Yeah.
It's really difficult for people to get their head around A, why people do it in the first place, but B, the stresses that go with it. Because people are like, well, you're just on stage. It's like, it's just, you just have fun for a living. And there's so much more to it than that is.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I mean, that could be a whole episode on its own.
For sure.
To then go into another role that people just didn't understand, has there been a point in your life where you've been able to shake that off, where people are like, oh, I get what he does now? Or do people still look at you and they're like, yeah, Chris, it's that guy that does all these things that I can't quite name?
I think it's become more of like cohorts of people that do, and most people don't. Like hanging out with you, you understand the music stuff, you understand the business stuff. And so we can talk about those things. But when I sit down to a family dinner, for example, like last night I had dinner with our like annual holiday family dinner. There's not a whole lot of talking about like what's actually behind what's going on at work for me, because I know it just isn't going to be A, interesting to anybody else, and B, they're not going to understand anyway. And it's not because they don't have the capacity to, it's just, they just haven't lived in that environment, in those worlds. And so what ends up happening is like I learn how to compartmentalize who I can have those types of conversations with and who I have different types of conversations with, and both can be great.
That's fair. There definitely were periods early in my career where I think my mom thought I was completely unhinged and insane, because she was like, but none of this makes sense. I was like, it's the music industry. That's how it works. So where are you now? Because after you were doing positive healing, thematic, inspire energy, side bench, like you kind of have done an awful lot in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
But where you are now, there is a side of you that I see that you seem so content and happy with where your life is. What changed?
Well, first, I'm glad that's the way I'm perceived, and I am feeling quite content. 2 years ago, I don't think I would have said that. The way I'm looking at this moment or this point in my life, I'm calling it my portfolio era. Everything's an era after Taylor Swift, right?
Totally.
So this is my portfolio era. And I think a lot of people think of success as like a ladder, right? You pick the right ladder, one rung after the next, you get the next title, you get the pay bump, you get the thing, you get promoted, and eventually you just like go on a cruise and retire and die. I don't know. I think it looks more like building a portfolio over time. And I've become more and more aware of that portfolio mindset and thinking around, where am I investing my time and energy? And instead of trying to build a portfolio around a career or an identity, it's been more about, what are the skills and relationships and bets, and where are the failures at least like compound into advantages when I'm thinking about more of a portfolio strategy to life. And so some of those bets pay off really early. Some of those bets may never pay off. But I think that's the advantage to this portfolio thinking, is like I can make many bets at once and I don't risk tremendous failure if I can do two or three or five things at a time. That said, I've also found throughout this portfolio thinking that sometimes you got to let some shit go or put it to the side at least and maybe pick it up later when the time is right. Other times, you got to double down a little harder on certain other things. And so, but at least I'm able to explore the edges and have many bets at once.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody else recently about this idea of as we get older, we really struggle to let go of things. And I love what you're saying about the idea that this portfolio that you build, sometimes you have to kind of revisit it and go, okay, actually, this isn't working from a
Yeah.
time constraint perspective. It's not that this is a bad idea or that I don't like it or it's causing negativity in my life. It's just I physically do not have enough time
Yeah.
to focus on this. And so the ability for you to have that clarity to go, and now I'll put that over there, and maybe one day I'll come back to it, maybe I won't. It doesn't matter. It's freed me up for all these other things. And I personally have been bad at that. I will just keep 100 plates spinning
At all costs.
at all costs. And then when I kind of take that step back and let things fall, I'm like, why was I doing that? And it's only when you kind of clear out that space that all the other things start to take shape because you're
Yeah.
allowing things to breathe.
Yeah. I think this principle is starting to form for me. And I don't know if I have like slogans or anything here yet, but like getting to clarity and focus is where like compounding interest comes from, both from a where am I choosing to spend my time and energy, but also in a lot of the things that I do, I lead other people and I'm delegating work across many different teams to get outcomes greater than I can do myself, which is back to the band stuff or the creative analogy stuff. But you can't really be effective as a leader of other people if you can't get to clarity and focus first in order to drive that clarity downstream.
With that idea of focusing on doing the work around your own personal wellness, what kind of things do you do to help kind of create those boundaries and safeguard that?
And there's so many little things that I do as part of a larger system. But I think the gravitational force or like the guiding North Star, let's call it, is I have a pretty clear 10-year view of what I'm trying to accomplish. And that allows me to prioritize across all the different things that I could do. And I could literally come up with 100 more things that I'm not doing now that I'd like to do. But I got to prioritize what to do, when, and why. And that 10-year view or that North Star really helps me say, like, is this helping me get closer or not to that thing? And that thing is broad, but specific enough that I can say yes or no, this isn't helping me get there. So an example, like a real life example would be there's a specific financial target that I want to hit and I frame that as economic security. And there is an absolute zero chance that I can get to that level of economic security if I just have a job and a salary, even a really good salary for the next 10 years. And so what that allows me to say is like, oh, there's this really exciting chief product officer role at this early stage healthcare company. And I got referred to the CEO and he or she and I had a great rapport. I could take that job and it'd be a 300K base and there's some equity involved. But even if that company happens to be $1 billion venture scale business, at that portion of equity over that 10 years of my life, I have to take 10 years to make that one bet and either make it to the thing I want to or not, or I can do these other things and stack a few things together and like de-risk that 10-year goal, right?
Yeah. So do you feel, because this is something I read that you said, which is focus on shareholders first creates a slow death spiral. And I think those intentions so often end up serving the wrong people. And is it going to make you feel good about yourself when you are sacrificing all of these other things to hit this specific goal of people who actually have no emotional attachment to the business at all? And that was the point for me where I was like, I've spent 25 years doing this. And I feel like I've been pushing my energy in the wrong place because I'm not helping the people that I came into this business wanting to help.
Yeah. I mean, there's no shortage of different ways to make money. And there are definitely people who've made a significant amount of money by playing the short game and choosing profit over purpose and putting people last or thinking of human resources as fungible resources. I would just prefer to make money in a way where if we focus on creating value for the customer first, there's almost no way to not make a profit at that point, right? If you're building something in a way that is supporting the people that you're building the thing for and solving their problem, and they're willing to pay to solve that problem. And you do that with the team of people that you love and care for every day. Profit is so much greater than just the money you're putting in the bank, but you can also put money in the bank when you're doing that well. And
Yeah,
I think you're just going to enjoy the journey also a lot more. I also think it's maybe this period of business that we're living through, which is largely like Jack Welchian period of business, where the current group of most business leaders and the people that we have worked for or with, and in some cases learned a lot from, have been trained by that like 80s stock market CEO type,
mm,
where everything was about shareholder value first, regardless of what it meant to the people that worked for you or your customers, right? But I think that's changing. I hope that's changing. I see a lot of good examples, I guess, of good leaders these days that have a different opinion about how the world should work. There's still a lot of those Jack Welchian types. There's still many of his disciples leading some of the largest publicly traded companies and training other people to act that way. But
yeah,
I feel like there is more and more of a groundswell of people trying to do well by doing good.
I agree. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things where, and I talk about this a lot with people, not necessarily in this sense, but the idea of like visibility being important. But that also works in terms of doing things differently in business.
Yeah.
It's very refreshing to see, and I just feel like it's really unfortunate that those kind of things get lost in a lot of the noise all the time.
Yeah. I think we live in this like black and white binary world where it's like you're either making a fuckload of money and you're a for-profit business, or you're a nonprofit and you never make money ever and you survive on donations. And I think there is the gray in between those two things, which is, as I think, like, if you think of profit as oxygen as opposed to the end result, it's the thing that keeps feeding the business to keep going. Like I said earlier about like making a record and hopefully somebody likes to listen to your music enough to buy a t-shirt so that you can make your next record kind of thing. Like that's how I think about profit, and impact is more like the outcome of the profit coming through the system. And there's a lot of businesses that operate that way. Durable missions need like durable engines, I guess.
I agree. And it's funny, like in recovery parlance, like we always talk about like the journey is the goal. And I
Hmm.
feel like so many people are so fixated on like where they want to go and what they want as the outcome that they miss all of the joy that leads up to that. And also they miss the ability to go off in a different direction as well. And
Yeah.
again, I'm very, very aware of the way I have been throughout my career, where I was just so singularly focused on I'm going to be the best person at what I do.
Yeah.
I will support the people around me, but unless this goes exactly the way I want it to go, I am an abject failure if it goes even slightly off. And that's hard because it's like putting pressure on myself to deliver in a certain way that makes me miss the actual beauty of the journey itself. And I think one of the things that really inspires me with you is the fact that you are doing this kind of portfolio building mentality where you get to experience all these different things and you don't shut yourself off from the world because something doesn't necessarily look right on paper. You're
Hmm.
willing to look at these things and try things out and try new things to see what fits and see where it sits within the portfolio, or it doesn't sit in the
Yeah.
portfolio, and that's fine as well.
Yeah.
And part of the work that I was doing around writing the second book about finding purpose is about giving yourself that ability to kind of play a little bit and
Yeah.
allow things into your life that wouldn't otherwise have had a natural place. And it's
Mhm.
okay because it doesn't have to be perfect to start with, but recognizing how does it make you feel? And
Yeah.
if it makes you feel positive, then is it something that you want to maybe try a bit more of? And I
Yeah.
think business can be like that. And so many people are just like, no, it's 9 to 5. You do this. This is what we need to get out of it. And that's just really soul crushing.
I wonder if that relates back to the identity thing though too, where business, if it's 9 to 5 and this is this, I'm the CEO and I make this much money and I have this house and I have this car and I have it because I have this thing. There is no room to play if that's the identity that you're seeking, right? Whereas
Yeah.
if you're more open to the journey, let's call it for an easy summarization, then you can be open to, I might work 9 to 5, but I always leave an hour in the day to have an open conversation. And one of my goals is to introduce somebody to somebody that I get no value from the introduction from, or whatever have you. And those things lead to the play or the white space that allows you to get creative. And I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that, but I wonder if there's an identity connection to the limited view
I
version.
I would say there is, but hearing you talk about that as well, even if you didn't know where you were going, the one thing that came up in my mind is because of the way you connect people, there must be so many things that have happened in this world that you are unaware of because of connections that you've put into place. And so many
And how
people, I
cool
feel
is that?
like it's really cool. That's what I was thinking. I was like, this is really amazing that there's all these potential incredible things that have been birthed from just you putting two or three people together and being like, hey, you're all cool. I think you would get on with each other. End of story. That's it. Like, and see what happens. And so there's probably all these amazing things that are happening in the world because of your willingness to not hoard connections
Yeah.
and just be open and fluid with the world.
I often try to like find ways to create things that create things. Like compounding interest is the thing behind that, I guess. And one of the first, I don't know, like legacy. One of the first times I guess I was like, oh, maybe I care about my legacy was I was walking down the boardwalk in Santa Monica, and I have LASIK now, but at the time I didn't have my glasses on, and this girl was waving at me. And I was like, oh, I hopefully I know this girl, but I cannot tell who she is yet. And as I got closer and closer to her, I realized like I don't know this person waving at me, and I felt awkward because I was like, hey, and then I was like, oh shit, I actually didn't know this person. And she asked me, she's like, "Is your name Chris?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "I just want to say thanks for creating what was later called Powered By, because I work there now and I do this for the company and I still see your like face in the founder story and stuff like that. And like I never actually got a chance to meet you, and so I just wanted to say thanks for like creating a space for me to have a job." And I was like so stunned in that conversation. I had no idea how to react. I was like, "Yeah, cool." Like ran away.
That's amazing though. So
But
you
then
even
walking
have
home from
firsthand
there,
experience.
that's the thing I was feeling. I was like, "Oh, man, maybe, like maybe that's the point of the journey at the end of the day is, like, creating space and opportunity, and things that create opportunities for other people is really where magic can live." And so, I
Yeah, I
don't know.
think
I think
so
that's
many people are motivated by the results they can see.
yeah,
And the magic really comes from the things that we don't see, the things that are outside of not just our own purview, but outside of our control.
yeah,
And when they grow into something else, you then have these experiences where people are like, I have a job because of you, and you've never met me before. Like,
yeah, yeah.
that's really wonderful.
I think that's the coolest thing. It's like, think of legacy as like a compound interest instead of a press release. Press release is still cool to get, but, like, the compounding interest that you create by doing good things and doing well by doing good, I guess, is really where the value is. The value is a
Yeah. The press releases are good to have, but it's funny. I was talking to somebody about being um, a self-deprecating Brit. And even though I have had the accolades in the past, the very first thing that I immediately think is, well, the only reason I have this is because Warner Music Group are a big advertiser and they have to give it to somebody. So I'm just the recipient of it. It's like, it's the weirdest mindset where I'm just like, I could just be like, thank you. I
yeah.
really appreciate this. Instead, I'm like, oh, God, I only get this because they
And I
spend a
worked
shit
hard
ton
to
of money.
land in that seat that created the opportunity, and the people that came before me gave me the chance. It's funny. I think that is like a Brit thing. I work with a crew in London right now, and man, the self-deprecating like nature is just bred in you guys, I think.
It really is. How do you see it as an American? Because the way we see like American optimism makes us feel sick to our stomachs.
Yeah.
And I'm sure our kind of like self deprecating views of the world probably make you feel the same.
There, I don't know if I have like a short answer to that other than when we're talking about an approach to something, and oftentimes we're talking about an approach to a product or an approach to a market, I'm like, well, let's just like, it's almost the move fast and break things American mentality. Like, we'll figure it out as we go kind of thing. And they're like, hold on, we need to like overthink this fucking thing. I'm like, you just lost the opportunity. It just literally ran right the fuck by you. Like, I want to go, go, go. And the other guys are like, well, let's talk about it and look at our belly buttons a little bit. And like, that's where it feels like the delta is for me. Like, okay, but can we move? You know, like, and I think that gets to, I don't know, maybe that's just a me thing, not an American thing, but I feel like starting is the job, not waiting to figure out how to start the right way. And that feels like the difference between my British friends and my American friends.
Yeah, we are notorious for overthinking, but also, and somebody many, many years ago said this to me, and it kind of took me aback because I was like, that can't be true. They were like 70% is enough. And the idea that like constantly striving for perfection on things was actually the limiting factor holding me back because
Yeah.
everything needed to be perfect.
When I'm talking about product research and product design, I'm like, don't build anything until you're 70% right, but don't get more right than 70% because you need to like actually ship the thing to get real feedback from real users in a real setting. And that action of shipping will create more clarity faster than that 70 to 100% of the thinking.
It's really exhausting being British.
Yeah, it's really exhausting listening to the British. I'm like,
All I'm
uh-huh,
saying,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
it's cultural.
We could have done 10 things by the time we finished the statement.
I feel like we're getting slightly better.
And hopefully you have like a cricket audio you can throw in there.
Or just a little image of a tumbleweed going across the screen. So, in terms of the things that you're working on now as well, this whole thread throughout your career of kind of like doing things for other people, there's so much work you do in like the clean energy, climate tech space, the health tech space, some of your own personal projects of things that you're working on. Everything is very much for the service of other people and helping them
Yeah.
on a much grander scale. Is that kind of one of your driving factors that you're aware of and that's kind of part of your decision making process when you go into new things?
Yes, 100%. Um, Part of my mantra and my like 10-year view is amplifying positive impact for people and the planet. That's like has to fit into that or it's a no automatically. And so my startup that I've been working on called The Folder that's just about to come to market is focused on providing peace of mind to families through the estate planning world. And we're approaching it slightly different than things you would think about. We're not writing estate plans with AI. Everyone's going to try to do that. But that is squarely centered on how do we leave whatever our intentions were, our legacy behind in a meaningful way beyond just the paperwork. The health tech stuff is really fun to work on product for because in a lot of cases, when you ship a new feature for a specific thing, you can actually see the direct result of that impacting a human on the other end in a positive. The climate stuff is a little more nebulous because, well, for a lot of reasons, depends on what part of climate you're working on. But my zone in climate tends to be around the energy sector just because that's where my experience is. And what's fun to think about in the energy part of what we're doing is sure, any energy we don't use is basically reduce the need for energy in general, which you can claim is making the world cleaner or happier. But using things more efficiently, like getting more out of the same thing, I think is more fun when we think about energy. And so how can we design tools or systems or software that help us maximize the use of the resources we have? Because there's a lot of energy that we make today that just doesn't get used. While everyone's talking about this like race to add new generation sources to the grids and how do we modernize the grids and all that stuff, there are all these stranded assets that are completely underutilized that have been capitalized that those people are sitting on and are costing people money and time and energy that aren't producing any value. And that's a fun space to think about. Take these stranded assets and create value out of them. But all of that to say is like, there's a lot of things you can choose to spend your time on. For me, one of the ways I try to narrow the list of many things is to get to a fewer things is it health tech or climate tech? Because those are still really big buckets of things you could do. But pretty much anything in those buckets, you're going to be doing something positive. Yeah. And so it's decision making, prioritization lens, I guess.
When so with all of these different projects across the portfolio that you're working on, because there isn't technically a title to hide behind anymore, who do you see Chris as now?
That's a good question. I I think about myself in a bunch of different contexts, I guess. I get back to the portfolio is like I'm not just a husband, I'm not just a father, I'm not just an entrepreneur, I'm not just a product person. I'm kind of all those things. And it depends on the context that I'm operating in, which of those things or combinations of those things is present. Oftentimes I feel or leader in some cases I like to refer to myself as, even though I feel slightly uncomfortable saying it sometimes. I feel like depending on the context, I can bring those characters to bear. And then sometimes I can leave those behind. Like at home, I don't need to be an entrepreneur or a CEO at home. I tried that once and well, mostly in previous relationships and never worked.
Shocker.
But I can be a great partner and I can be a great father at home and I can take some of the things I've learned through my leadership experience and entrepreneurship experience to be a better husband and father. But it's the palette of colors I get to paint with in the setting I get to paint than it is any one color, I guess.
And I love the fact that everything that you've done in terms of working through a loss of identity has actually given you the ability to not hold so tightly to anyone that it becomes a crutch. And I think if ever there is an end goal for any of this kind of like personal development and wellness work, it's to get to that stage where you are just comfortable allowing yourself to be all things at once is really powerful.
It is, man. And it's definitely hard to stay in that zone. I will admit, like sometimes I feel like perfectly in flow and super stoked. And other times I'm like, where was that thing that I had a second ago? Like now I'm back in this like hyper stress that I only feel this way. And this is where my focus is totally going. And like, how do I get back to that expansive abundance mindset? But when you're in it, it feels great to be able to be full palette of colors. And the practice of staying in that state, I think is where the journey is. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it reflecting off of this picture. There's a blue neon sign staring me in the face all day in my office that says, love the practice.
Well, so I have one last question for you. And that is, if there was one piece of advice you could give to younger Sean, what would it be?
I think it'd be start. I think at least that's what it would be right now. Start is where all the momentum starts to happen and build up. Like momentum beats perfect positioning. You don't need a master plan. You need to be like on a direction and just going. Like that action creates the clarity. The clarity starts to compound. And so all that I think is starting. And I know other folks have said that, and I'm not the first to say it, but it's definitely one that is so true for me. Even little things like that are happening at the moment as we speak. We just started or restarted Product Hang. I had no perfect plan for how to do that. I had a direction of the type of partner that I wanted to find and found that person. And we just started throwing the website up and starting to have conversations. And we got to our first client in the first couple of weeks, and like, it's just putting that one foot in front of the other and being committed to take the chance and look stupid, I guess.
That's the thing with looking stupid as well. You feel you look stupid, nobody else sees it. And it's one of those things, especially maybe again, it's a British thing, but the reason we don't do so much is this fear of how other people will perceive us.
Sure.
And actually, more often than not, their perception of us is not what we think it is. So our projection of that is
absolutely
the thing that holds us back.
Except I definitely perceive you guys as navel gazers.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining me. It's been great. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you for having me.
One of the things I appreciated most about this conversation is kind of how it quietly reframes success. Not as something you arrive at, but something you kind of keep having to renegotiate. Not as a title or a role, but as a collection of choices that we all make over time. If this episode felt slower than some of the others, that's intentional. So some ideas basically need space to land. So if you want to learn more about Chris and his work, you'll find links in the show notes. And if you're enjoying the podcast, I'd love it if you could like and comment on the episode and subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform you listen on. For daily motivation, follow us on Instagram at 12 Steps to Success with the word 12 spelled out, not the numbers. And thanks again for listening. See you next time.